Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Global Door, number TC2202. This is a standard surface door closer. A size 2 spring is this door closer and will be shown to you in the aluminum finish. The name Global is synonymous with door closers and has been for decades. The name Global is also related to the name Transatlantic, whose name is synonymous with very good, exceptional quality imported builders hardware, commercial hardware really, for decades. And currently both of those companies are under the name of Imperial. So they've taken those two brand names and put them under the Imperial brand. I don't know the purpose, but the name Global, the name Transatlantic is still associated with these products. So first, a visual tour. This is your size 2 body, typical modern style door closer. Very appropriate for certain applications, inappropriate for many others, and we're going to go over that in a moment. Okay. You will get, of course, the main arm and the forearm. The main arm, then the forearm. You get the idea why we would call it that. The shoe, the door shoe. This will, of course, connect to the door closer body. Adjustable to account for a range of reveal that you might have if you're doing a top jam mount. We're going to go over that in a moment. Okay. You can play with the length of the forearm. You will, of course, get a spindle cap. One side the closer body will be connected to, the other side it won't be, so you'll just dress it off with that spindle cap. Lastly, that's when the customer calls and says, I didn't get the spindle cap. You've retrieved the spindle cap and it's back home. Lastly, a package of fasteners. You'll get the screw to hold the main arm onto the body. You'll get the screws to hold the shoe onto the door or to the header of the frame. You will get the screw to hold the elbow together between the main and the forearm. You'll get the screws for the body. A really easy installation of these door closers. But first, there is data down below before we get to the installation instructions. It's a grade 3 door closer. That means that it is really rated for low volume installations, something that's quite basically residential in volume. People that buy these from us want to put a door closer on their garage door, which they're going to use 6 times a day, that sort of volume. I also have a client that is a manufacturer of mobile homes and I'm not sure the proper term, but trailers that would be semi-permanent. That narrow fiberglass door, quite light, does not really need a full-size adjustable 1 through 4 closer where you're going to install like you install on the front door of a fast food restaurant. You know, you don't need that. So sometimes the size 2 closer is just perfect for it. Aluminum alloy body, reversible and non-handed. 2 independent valves to control sweep and latch closing speeds. A back check is optional. You can order certain closers with a back check, probably not this one, because a back check would be a valve control that would be out about 90 degrees that would arrest the door from swinging violently open further should a gust of wind catch it. You're probably not using a 2 spring on a parallel arm mount exterior out swinging door. Packed standard for regular and top jam mounting. This is not a tri-packed door closer, meaning you cannot install it right out of the box with a parallel arm bracket because that's not included. There is a link below this video to a parallel arm bracket, which if you're going to install the door closer on the push side of a door that swings out, you'll possibly need that. We'll go over that in a moment. Available in aluminum and dark bronze. Included with the package would be both machine and wood screws. If you're installing this onto an aluminum header, let's say, in a top jam mount, you'd want to drill and tap those threads and use the machine screws. Otherwise, it would be the wood screws. Body length is 8 1/8. And let's test that now. Overall body length, 8 1/8. That's indeed correct. Overall width of the body, about 1 1/4 inches. Overall projection, whoa. Overall projection, about 2 7/8. None of that really matters because how door closers are measured are the center to center of the screw holes, both horizontally and vertically. Center to center is what's really important. And the factory says that this is 7 3/8, and that would be correct. And then it'd probably be, I believe, 3/4 inch vertically. Yeah, that is indeed correct. So you're going to have the most important aspect, if you are replacing a door closer, what's the center here to here? What's the center here to here? That's what you'll need to measure. 7 3/8 and then 3/4. If it's a new installation, you probably don't care about that very much. If you're replacing one, you very much do, because you're likely going to encounter, if you're buying this, you're certainly going to want to check the existing, because it's likely that the existing has different centers. So be sure about that. Now, there is a link below this video to the installation instructions. Okay, now the link below this video to the installation instructions refers to the 3 different types of mount. Again, if you're going to do parallel arm, you need to order that parallel arm bracket separately, which happens to be this PAB-2200, a triangular bracket. If you have one and going to reuse it, just reuse it. This is an incredibly generic design of bracket, so just be mindful of that. When doing a door closer, there's basically 4 sections to the installation instructions. There's the overview, and that's generally the smallest portion of the installation instructions that will say, here's how you adjust the valves. Here are the parts that are included. Maybe a definition of those items that you get, meaning a list of the screw types and quantity that you would get. How to start the installation process, independent, 4 parts installation, independent of the method, regular arm, top jam mount, or parallel arm that you elect to use. So you need to go through the installation overview first, determine how you're going to install it, then go to one of those 3 immediately and ignore the other 2. So you're really only going to use half of the installation instructions. Okay. So an overview of initially getting started is select the degree of opening and use the dimensions shown in the above template to mark 4 holes on door for closer and 4 holes on frame for... Okay. So basically what they're saying is the installation instruction paragraph is with each of the 3 types. You need to determine first which type, how are you going to mount it? So let's do that. Does the door swing in? If the door swings in, you're going to mount the door closer body, most likely, onto the pull side of the door, which would be called a regular arm, or in this case, a standard arm mount. If the door is an interior door, meaning you don't want to install the door closer body on the exterior of an opening, it'll get rained on, it might freeze. It may not matter to you if you're going to install it regular arm pull side mount or push side mount like with a parallel arm bracket. You might need to mount it in a parallel arm bracket even though it's an interior door that swings in. Example, restaurant bathroom door, hallway, ladies to the left, men to the right. Those doors, left hand and right hand, but when the door opens to 90 degree, the jamb is built so tight to that perpendicular wall that when this body is installed onto the door, it will actually hit the wall. So in that event, you'll mount the closer in a parallel arm fashion, push side mount. So you need to be mindful of, how am I going to install this? And when the door is operating, will the installation permit the inclusion of this body and its arm and its parallel arm bracket dimensionally? Are you still going to be okay based on all the factors required? Because there's no clear-cut single way of doing this. If it's an in-swing door, put it on the pull side, because in that same bathroom installation, do you want to see the door closer from the restaurant side of the business? You don't. You don't want your clients looking at additional hardware. Put them on the inside. But if your wall won't account for it, then you've got to put them on the outside. Another factor to consider is that when you have a door closer, there is an associated spring range or spring tension. This happens to be a size 2 spring, a very small spring. There are now, and have been for years, adjustable spring closers where you can tailor the amount of spring tension set. When you are mounting this in a regular arm mount or a top jam arm mount, there is a direct relation between spring size and the table of door weight and door size that the spring is rated to handle. If you parallel arm mount at the closer, because of the mechanics of the parallel arm mounting, you lose one step of efficiency, meaning you really need a size. If you have a 3-foot door that swings out, the table would tell you a size 3 spring, but if you parallel arm mount it, you really need a size 4 spring because of a loss of efficiency of how the door closer body can pull that door closed. So keep that in mind as well when you're determining how to mount this. Regular arm mount, probably going to be most common. Second with parallel arm for this closer, and then top jam would be quite unusual. Top jam you see all the time in those fast food restaurants where the door closer body is mounted up onto the header. It's up higher and away from everything for that door that swings out. The body's up taller, the arm is perpendicular to the door. Very efficient way to install it. No additional hardware is necessary. But in those installations, as in all of these, you have to make sure that the dimensions of the door and the frame are adequate to physically permit you to attach this material. Minimum top rail dimension, minimum head dimension. You'll want to study the dimensional properties of what's demanded in the installation instruction. Overview, right, standard and then top jam, and then parallel arm mount. You want to study those dimensions required for the proper installation of the material. So once you've decided, and if you have any concern about how to go about installing this material, reach out to us first, meaning deciding. We'll help you determine that. You'll then have your installation paragraph. Because because standard or regular arm mount is most common, let's review that, which would be on, at least the instructions that are included would be on what would be page 2. Regardless of the installation method chosen, a uniform place to start is locating the body on the door or the header relative to the vertical axis of pivoting, meaning the center line of the screw hole. And it will say, well, they're really referencing to the edge of the door, and that is actually not how this is properly done at all. It will likely not matter. However, what will you do if you have a swing clear hinge? I'm telling you now that this is referencing the edge of the door. It's probably not going to be an issue. It is not an issue if you have a standard door. But the dimension is properly given from the vertical axis of pivoting down to the first hole for the body. That vertical axis of pivoting is the imaginary plumb line between the center of all the hinge barrels. But again, if you have an unusual hinge, maybe a raised barrel hinge, maybe a swing clear hinge, maybe you have concealed hinges where the vertical axis of pivoting is actually unusual. You need to take that into account and measure from there. The relationship between that vertical axis of pivoting and where you locate the door closer body is related to the degree of opening that you're going to achieve. And you'll notice that if you change that, what is the B dimension, if you change that slightly, you don't really achieve much distance in degree of opening at all. So it's not a super critical dimension. However, you'll notice that the closer you get to the hinge axis of pivoting, the greater the degree of opening. So if you want this door to basically go to 90 or 110 degree, or not more than 120, you're going to follow, for that size 2 closer, a 6 5/16 dimension from the edge of the door, or really about a 6 3/8 dimension vertical axis of pivoting. If you need to get the door open greater than that, then you're going to go closer to the hinge vertical axis of pivoting. I've seen door closers installed like at 15-inch from that dimension, way far out. And that's because it was a really unusual closet where it could only go to 45 degree, and the installer really wanted the door to stop there, so you couldn't bash the door into the wall behind it. So the further away, the smaller the degree. The closer it is to the hinge, the greater the degree of opening. This closer will certainly permit 180 degree installation physically of the body itself, provided that you don't have any obstacle of the wall or of the door or of trim or of hardware itself. A regular arm mount will certainly go 180 degree, but before you get to 180 degree, the body of the closer is probably going to hit the wall, so keep that in mind. So that first dimension horizontally is important, but not super crucial, but follow the installation instructions. Then you go to the center to center. You're going to be 7 3/8 over, 7 3/8 center to center. Then you're going to go down 3/4 inch, which is indeed the dimension that's on there. Now you'll have your 4 holes for the closer body. What is important and crucial is when you go vertically to mark the locations for the shoe of the door closer forearm onto the header. That vertical dimension is crucial because if you've ever walked through a door and you can hear a clanking about halfway opening, that's because the arm is hitting the top of the door, and either the screws are loose that hold the arm to the body or the elbow together, or that vertical dimension has not been adhered to and you're literally hitting the top of the door every time you open and close the door. So you want to be sure that that's all correct. If you're installing one of these door closers, mark your holes, step back and do a reality check and make sure that you've got a regular arm installation, the body's on the pull side, you're on the hinge side, etc. One time I was going too quickly and started drilling holes for a parallel arm bracket when it was obviously a regular arm installation. So we had some extra sex bolts through the door that bound nothing to the door. Double check, measure twice, cut once. Then, when you have that vertical dimension, you'll then be able to get the C dimension, which is the same as the B dimension for center line of the vertical axis of pivoting to where you're going to mount or mark these holes. What I would do is once you've got all the holes marked, double check them with a tape measure. Reality check, double check them. Then center punch, bam, bam, all 6 holes. Pre-drill your holes. Start with a tiny little hole, 3/30 seconds, then pre-drill them and tap them properly. And at that point, you're going to be done in 5 minutes. If you have lots of these to do, I would recommend that you purchase from us a pre-manufactured template, if there's one available for this closer, there probably is, or that you make one yourself, so that you take a block of wood and you've got holes drilled in the right places, and you shim it up, you square it off to that part of the door, and you just mark, 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 center punch, and you're eliminating the possibility for error of measuring, because that's really where the trouble will come in, that you've mismeasured. You've got the tape measure upside down, it looked like it was 7 3/8, you were actually marking 6 3/8, or even worse, 8 3/8, where that hole won't be covered. So you've got the method determined, you've got your holes measured, marked, and drilled. Time to put the door closer body on. The next thing really to pay attention is what side do the valves go on in relationship to the hinge side of the door. And you'll want to be mindful of that. And let's start with the installation instructions link. And by the way, in a regular arm mount, your latch and sweep valves will be towards the hinge side, which is not the same if you're doing a top jam mount. Well, it is actually the same if you're doing a top jam mount, but not the same if you're doing a parallel arm fashion installation. They're actually opposite the hinge. So if you install the body onto the door and it just doesn't open but more than an inch, and you can tell you're doing something wrong, check to make sure the valves are on the right side of the installation. I've done that before. I think I've made all of the mistakes before. So installation instructions: select the degree of opening, use those dimensions, drill your pilot holes, tap them, mount the closer on the door with the regulating speed screw towards the hinge, place the main arm shaft on top of the closer. Index mark as illustrated. For right-hand door, number 4, illustration A. For left-hand door, number 1, illustration B. So what they're saying is the relationship of where you install the arm onto the spindle is related to what hand of door you're doing, and simply follow those instructions as indicated. You've got a small mark that's right there that you will use to place correctly based on what the instructions tell you for the position of the arm. Then you attach the main arm, the forearm to the main arm. You get that attached to the door. Make sure your screws are tight. Place the cap where it goes on the bottom of the door closer. Then test the door. Open the door up, cycle it a couple of times, and then you literally will adjust with like a number 2 Phillips those valves. The number 1 valve, well, they call them 1 and 2. And I'm not seeing where they define 1 and 2. Oh, no, they do. Forgive me. Adjustment instructions. Oh, I'm sorry. If it was a snake, it would have bit me. Number 1 is the closing speed. Number 2 is the latching speed. Latch is like 0 to 15 degree. Latch, just that area where it's going to latch. The sweep is from 15 to basically 90, or where a back check would come in to play. If you've heard the term delayed action, that's an additional valve that will allow you to control the speed at which the closer will close for handicap compliance, because there's a regulation, there's a part of the code that states you must give so many seconds for someone to get through the opening before that door closer starts to hit them. Test the installation, test the door and make sure that it works properly before you even adjust the valves at all. You might not need to adjust them. You might want to tweak them slightly. These valves are not staked, that I can tell, meaning they're not punched so that you cannot remove them. Be mindful that you don't want to remove them. Don't open them up hardly much at all, because that's just going to increase the spring. But if you were to back them out all the way, that's where the oil is going to escape. So unless your door closer is not closing at all, don't back them out much at all. I wouldn't exceed a full turn. And if you have to go beyond that because your door is still not closing, you're probably okay to continue backing them out or counterclockwise. But don't needlessly back them out. The closer will be irreparable at that point, and there'll be a mess. There'll be oil everywhere. I've done that as well. The back check that I had referred to is mentioned there. This door closer body does not feature a back check valve, but it is, the latching and the closing speed are defined there. And at that point, your installation is literally done. There's nothing else to do about this. Now, I like the name Global, meaning I like their product line. I have no reservations about them. I would not. I have no reason to dissuade you from using their products, and I have every reason to recommend that you do so. In the area or in the arena of imported builders hardware, Asian imported builders hardware, there are a lot of people who bring that material in, and they're almost all equal quality. And what really differentiates a Global from another competitor of theirs really is the customer service, because they're really not selling the same Asian imported item, high quality Asian imported item, because you can get that from anyone. What separates them is customer service, quality, the installation instructions that have been manufactured for the item. How clear are those? How accessible are those? How easy are those to understand? Were they written by someone whose first language was English? That's not always the case. That would be a reason. So having inventory on hand, having customer service, having the ability for them to have a low minimum order requirement. If you need just one of these closers, will the company that you're considering take an order for that and send it to you? All come into play. I would recommend that you review the Global product catalog and familiarize yourself with their product line. And if you have any questions on the Global TC2202 standard surface door closer or any other Global product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.